Hey there everyone, what's up? Today I'm going to do an impressions video on older game because I've decided to do impressions videos on somewhat older games now also. This is one that I think is kind of underrated. um, that would be this game right here. This is Killer is Dead. Killer is Dead, of course, I think it came out last year. It might have been even longer, but probably last year. I had this game since last year sitting on my shelf, and I just haven't touched it until recently when I've finished it. And yeah, it's made by Grasshopper Manufacturer, and Sudogoichi did something on it. I don't know. I haven't really looked it up. I don't think it's important. I know there's people who are fans. I'm a fan, but I didn't go into the game expecting it to be spectacular, and I kind of went into it just with an open mind about what it was going to kind of be like in relation to other Grasshopper Manufacturer games that I played. And that was a pretty good way to go into it, actually. Yeah, we'll start out by talking about what it looks like, because it's obviously the first thing you notice about the game. It does have this kind of strange cel-shaded look to it. I don't know how to explain that really. It's not exactly cel-shaded. It's you know that famous like Obama change poster where it's like three colors that are really solid. That's kind of how the shading is in this game. It's a lot of the times it looks like, I mean, obviously it's more than three colors, but it looks like that same kind of block printy kind of shading that's going on 3D models. It's really interesting. It doesn't always look good though. There are points where it looks a little messy or weird and kind of shiny or just like a little strange. But overall, like, I think as a style for the game, it's really kind of a cool thing. It's different. It looks interesting. And, I mean, it doesn't always work, but when it does work, it works well. So, I mean, obviously, it's not a game that you're going to go into, like, it's not like jaw-dropping landscapes and amazing graphics. But what it does is do something interesting and kind of, I want to say, avant-garde. And that's how it comes across. I mean, it comes across that way, and I think that's what they're aiming for. So, you know, even though it doesn't always work, the aim is important, I think, in what's happening here, and I think they're hitting their mark, which, you know, is not, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think it always works, but I think it does work in some cases. So I guess it's good. I can't really complain about it, because although it's not great, it does what it's supposed to do, and it does what I'm assuming they wanted it to do. So not so bad. I mean, the graphics are pretty okay. The environments of this game are something else I wanted to talk about. The environments are weird and floaty, but not in a bad way. The environments are kind of like weird little self-encapsulated worlds. So it does come across as kind of like stages in a game, but the game itself references that. And also, it really fits into the overall tone where everything is kind of weird and floaty. Everything is like a weird island unto itself. That's the only way I can explain it. The whole thing with the game is that you have this kind of dreamlike, surreal setting in every mission. And the stages being kind of floaty in the sense that, like, they seem like literally islands floating in the middle of nowhere for everything. It really fits. Like, every time I went to a new stage, I never thought the stages looked great or the environments were like super impressive, but they have a tone to them that's like kind of really interesting, and I don't even really know how to explain it. I can't really give a clear example, but you'll go into the stage and you'll find that, like, you know, it's floaty and weird, and the environment kind of has this weird artificial feeling, but everything works together to kind of support that artificial feeling in the game. So, although I think it is probably a design limitation in the game that they were working with, they worked it into the entirety of the game, which makes it like really interesting. It's really put together in a way that like I think they're kind of working within these confines of a budget and whatever the manpower they had to make the game, and they worked it into the game in a way that is really masterfully done. I think that's what I want to say. It's done in a way that all of these constraints are kind of planned into the entirety of the game, and they don't come across as cheap. They come across as elements of the game, which is a really kind of interesting and kind of innovative way to work around your budget constraints. I think this game does a really good job of that. We'll move on to some characters, I guess. The characters in this game are all crazy. Obviously, you'd probably expect that for like a kind of Suda-goichi game. But they're not crazy in the same way as other games. It's not like No More Heroes, where it's kind of wacky all over the place. There is wackiness, but it's not the same type. It's not the same tone. The tone of the game is really different, and the characters kind of, embody that in a way that's really interesting. I think, there are a lot of kind of some crazier characters like that almost get into the realm of stuff that you might have saw in No More Heroes, but for the most part you have these kind of strange happenings, and they are all things where like there's ghosts and weird shape changers and giants and things, and you're like, they're totally non sequiturs, and in everything in the game is like a non sequitur. It, like does not connect to anything, but it sort of does. And I think the characters do a really good job of kind of showing that, in the sense that like you have all of these kind of weird characters in weird situations doing weird things, and it's really interesting. There's something that was like really kind of captivating about this game for me, and it wasn't the gameplay, which I'll actually talk about. The gameplay is a lot like No More Heroes. You kind of run into these stages and you hack and slash your way through things. Sometimes you shoot. You have a bunch of weapons that you can upgrade, and kind of upgradable attacks with a sword, and you have an arm that can turn into many different types of guns. And they can all be upgraded. So you have a freeze gun and like a kind of charged shot, and a regular kind of machine gun type of shot. And I don't know. It's all pretty basic. The battle, the actual gameplay is not something I'm like super excited about. It's fun, but it's not like super in depth or really interesting in any way. It's a lot like No More Heroes, except what happens is when you have these stages with all these weird characters and just the whole weirdness of the whole thing, and it all comes together in a way that like the gameplay itself doesn't even really act as the main kind of thing for the game. And it's interesting because when I was talking to some of the other people, Alex from Return to Mother Base, about how I felt like this movie felt like a combination of No More Heroes and like a kind of avant-garde student art film, and it's really good. I really enjoy that kind of setting for this game. And you have a lot of strangeness that happens, and you can kind of reference it to things. Like, even the first kind of boss battle you're doing is like an Alice in Wonderland kind of setting. And, there's some goofier ones. There's like a tank engine named Tommy, if you, like that kind of thing. But there's a lot of stuff that is goofy like that, but it all comes across as less goofy and more like these weird, surreal situations. And I think it really works. It really made me want to play the game more. more than I probably would have if it were more action. I mean, it's all action, but if it were only based on the action, I probably would have been like, it's fun, but not so great. But when I played through Killer is Dead here, I thought, like, it's so interesting in so many ways that I couldn't really pull myself away from it. I've kept going back to the submissions. I cleared all the submissions. I did all the kind of side stuff in the game that I could do, and it was really good. Let's talk about a little bit more of that. There are this kind of side missions. This is the part I didn't really like about the game, was that the gigolo missions. I think everybody who talks about this game complains about them, and I don't really feel like they're, I mean, they're kind of goofy and not exactly, fun. I think what happens with them is that they take too long. I think they're not fun, and like you just do the same thing over and over again, and it's like a mini game that runs like way too long, and you have to do way too much, and that was like not fun. And I remember thinking, like, I've picked up girls in real life faster than this game is letting me pick up these girls. Why is it so slow, and why is it the same thing over and over again? That kind of thing I didn't really enjoy, but I did it enough to get all the weapons that they give you, and then I was done. I stopped after that. And I think that was like the slowest part of the game. But it's not like a huge part. There's only 3 girls, and one of them is not done in the same way. So there's really like 2 girls you're going back and forth between, which is, it's all right once or twice, but after like that, you're just like, oh god, do I have to do this again? And you don't really have to do it. It's optional, but if you want all the weapons and the upgrades they give you, then you kind of have to do it. So that was the worst part of the game for me. I want to talk about the music also, actually. The music in this game is done by Akira Yamaoka, who did the Silent Hill soundtracks, obviously, but it's really good. I think the tone of the music is like the kind of thing where it really fit the surreal qualities of what's happening in the game. So I found myself like really enjoying the music in the background, and many times I'd start the game and I wouldn't actually start it, just leave it on the menu and hear the menu music kind of repeating. And not on purpose, not to like listen to the music, but I'd be doing some other stuff, or like playing a handheld while waiting for it to load or whatever, and I'd get stuck on the music, and it really fits the tone. I felt like it got me into the game a lot more, but the music was really good, and I think that was a real good point to bring this whole thing together. And yeah, Killer is Dead was not, it was different than what I was expecting, for sure, but it was different in a really good way. It's not the kind of bright, goofy wackiness that you usually expect from a Grasshopper Manufacturer game. And it is not to say that they're all bright and fun, but like I'm thinking like No More Heroes, whereas like what's it called? I'm forgetting the name. The one with the skull and I don't remember. I can't remember the name. It's on my shelf, but I can't find it. Yeah, whatever. It's not important. The name is not important. You guys know what I'm talking about. But that game is like bright in tone. Like it's lots of jokes, and the tone is really bright, even though like it's very dark and you're fighting monsters all the time. This game is dark in a way that's totally different. It's dark in this creepy way that's not like horror. It's just like so surreal, and the story is disjointed and kind of vague as to what's happening, and I think that really adds to it. I really enjoyed it. I know a lot of people complained about the story in this game, like, oh, it makes no sense, it's not interesting. I totally disagree with that. I think like playing through this, I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed thinking about the story. It really did make me think a lot, and I thought that was something I really enjoyed. Overall, I would highly recommend this game. I'm sure it's super cheap now. I know it didn't do well. It didn't do well in Japan either. So the price went down really quickly. So I can assume that the price is very low everywhere. And it's a shame, really, because I would like to see more games exactly like this, in the same style and with the same people, even. It's really interesting. The game kind of sets itself up for a possible sequel in some kind of bizarre way, but it's really interesting. That's all I really want to say about it. I think I don't really have any more topics to talk. There's no multiplayer or online elements. There is some DLC, but I haven't touched it. I don't think it's actual play DLC. I think it's some items or something. I didn't even download it. It came free in the game. But overall, this was a really fun game and a real kind of, I want to say, like an artsy, weird action game, which is like something you don't come across, and that's working really well in its favor. So, yep, that's about it. I guess I'm done, so I will see you guys next time.